The evening sun hung low over the misty mountains, casting long shadows over Erebor, the lonely mountain. Beneath its looming peaks, a vast kingdom once flourished, its riches unmatched and its power unrivaled. But beneath the glittering treasure hoarded by smog, there lay something far darker. The dwarves, famed for their love of gold and jewels, had discovered far more than treasure within the mountain, a secret so dangerous it had been sealed away by kings long dead. But what was this secret? What did the dwarves uncover in the deep, forgotten places of Erebor? The key to this mystery had been buried for centuries, and now, with the fall of smog, it was time to uncover the truth. But the questions remained. What had smog been guarding? And why had the dwarves hidden it so fiercely, even at the cost of their lives? As the sun dipped behind the mountain's jagged silhouette, the company gathered at the entrance of Erebor, staring into the darkness beyond. A sense of dread and anticipation settled over them, the air thick with the weight of what had been discovered. Gandalf, the wise and ever-curious wizard, paced before the group, his brow furrowed in thought. His eyes, though old, still gleamed with a fire that spoke of a life dedicated to uncovering the deep mysteries of Middle-earth. "This is no ordinary treasure," Gandalf murmured, his voice low, almost a whisper. The dwarves did not just mine for gold. They unearthed something far more sinister. Aragorn, standing nearby, glanced toward Gandalf, his expression somber. He had long known that the legacy of Middle-earth's ancient powers was not easily unraveled, and what lay beneath Erebor could hold consequences far worse than any battle against Sauron. Thorin Oakenshield, his face haunted by the weight of his ancestors' sins, took a deep breath. He had come here to reclaim Erebor for his people, but this was something else entirely. We came to reclaim a kingdom. But what if we've only uncovered a deeper curse? A new figure stood among them, a dwarven historian, a descendant of Durin, whose family's history had long been entwined with the secrets of Erebor. The historian's heart beat faster as the words sank in. This was no simple quest for treasure. This was a journey to unearth the ancient, forgotten evils that had been sealed beneath the mountain. The dwarves of Erebor, led by Durin the First, had once been masters of the deep places of the world, delving further and further into the earth. But in their greed, they unearthed more than they had bargained for an ancient evil, buried by the valor long before the First Age had ended. What had once been a symbol of the dwarves' strength and perseverance was now a shadowed kingdom, a tomb that held not only riches, but the dark remnants of a power that should never have been disturbed. It was this legacy that the Blue Wizards had been sent to quell. Far beyond the reaches of Sauron's shadow, in the distant east, the Blue Wizards had ventured, seeking to combat the very forces that had once threatened Middle-earth. But history had forgotten them. Their names had been erased from the annals had they done, and why had they failed? What had they uncovered in their travels that was so dangerous it remained hidden for so long? The historian pored over ancient texts and runes discovered deep within the mountain, deciphering forgotten languages and tracing the lineage of Erebber's kings. They uncovered clues pointing to something far darker than treasure. Old maps revealed hidden chambers, sealed off by the dwarves themselves, chambers that even Smog had not dared to enter. These clues spoke of the Blue Wizard's mysterious involvement, how they had been sent by the Valor to stop the spread of Morgoth's influence, and how their failure to return had led to their legacy being lost to time. Through the ancient texts, the historian learned of the Arkenstone, not just a symbol of kingship, but a key to something far darker. What had the dwarves been guarding beneath Erebber, and what had Smog kept from the world? The pieces began to fall into place, revealing the extent of the Blue Wizard's efforts and the catastrophic consequences of their failure. As the historian and the company gathered more information, strange occurrences began to unfold. The air around Erebber seemed to pulse with a strange energy. At night, dreams of ancient kings and forgotten battles filled their sleep. Visions of dark forces rising beneath the mountain. Whispers in the wind that spoke of things long buried. The deeper we go, the historian said, the more I believe the dwarves did not merely guard treasure. They sealed away something far more dangerous. Gandalf nodded gravely. The dwarves sought power they did not understand. In their desire to uncover riches, they unearthed the remnants of Morgoth's corruption, something that should have remained buried. Strange phenomena began to plague their camp. Whispers echoed through the stone halls of Erebber, voices that seemed to come from nowhere, murmuring cryptic phrases. The closer they got to the truth, the more they realized that Smog's hoard was not the treasure everyone thought it was. Smog had guarded something far darker, something tied to Morgoth's ancient power. The group stood on the precipice of an ancient chamber, one that had been sealed for centuries. As they entered, the temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with the scent of old magic. The walls were lined with strange symbols and runes that seemed to shimmer in the torchlight. A sense of unease filled the chamber, the oppressive silence broken only by the whispers that seemed to emanate from the stone itself. The Blue Wizards, Gandalf said softly, his voice filled with a deep understanding. They did not fail. They simply disappeared. Their mission was never truly completed. The historian's eyes widened as they uncovered the last remnants of the Blue Wizards. Campaign, magical relics, ancient tomes, and dark artifacts tied to Morgoth's power. The deeper they delved, the more they realized that the true nature of the dwarves' hoard was far more sinister than they had ever imagined. The Blue Wizards had been sent to stop Morgoth's lingering influence, but their failure to do so had allowed it to fester beneath Erebber, waiting for realized, too late, that their discovery had awoken something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The remnants of Morgoth's empire, once sealed away by the dwarves, had stirred once again. "This is it," the historian whispered, a sense of dread creeping over them. "The evil we've been trying to uncover. It was never truly gone. We've done what the blue wizards could not," Gandalf said grimly. "And now we must face the consequences." The group faced a choice: destroy the relics they had uncovered, or risk unleashing an evil far worse than anything they had ever imagined. Erebber's legacy had become a warning. Some secrets, no matter how much they beckon, are best left buried. Some secrets were meant to remain buried forever, Gandalf said quietly, his voice filled with sorrow. And some legacies, however forgotten, are best left untouched. As the mountain trembled, the darkness deepened, and the group knew that they had set in motion a chain of events that could change the course of Middle-earth forever. The true war was just beginning. The group stood in the mouth of the cavern, the oppressive silence of Erebber surrounding them like a heavy cloak. The air felt thick, almost alive, as if the mountain itself was watching, waiting. Their torches flickered in the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the stone walls, where symbols and ancient runes pulsed with a faint, unsettling glow. Gandalf took a cautious step forward, his eyes scanning the strange markings on the walls. "This is no ordinary place," he said, his voice low, reverberating through the chamber. "It was sealed away for a reason." The historian, a descendant of Durin, stood beside him, their heart pounding with both fear and curiosity. What was hidden here, Gandalf? What did the dwarves discover that was so dangerous? Gandalf hesitated before answering. It was not just treasure they sought. There were ancient powers buried deep within Erebber, remnants of Morgoth's evil, forces that should never have been unearthed. The historian's thoughts raced. They had come here seeking to uncover the forgotten history of Erebber, to learn about the Blue Wizard's role in protecting Middle-earth, and the legacy of their campaign in the East. But this was far more than they had bargained for. As they ventured deeper into the cavern, the temperature dropped, the very stone beneath their feet cold and unwelcoming. Strange sounds echoed through the tunnels, whispers, like voices carried on the wind, or perhaps the mountain itself calling to them. The historian could feel the weight of something ancient and terrible pressing against them, a presence that lurked just beyond the edge of their perception. Gandalf motioned for them to move forward, his eyes narrowed in concentration. "Stay close," he murmured. "There are things in this mountain far darker than we ever imagined." They continued deeper into the darkness, their steps echoing through the corridors, until they stumbled upon a hidden chamber sealed away for centuries. The walls were lined with symbols that seemed to shift before their eyes, runes glowing with a faint, sickly light. A cold draft passed through the chamber, sending a shiver down their spines. "Look," the historian whispered, pointing to the wall. "These runes, they speak of something ancient, something far beyond treasure." Their heart raced as they deciphered the symbols. The dwarves, they were guarding something here, something tied to Morgoth's influence. Gandalf's expression grew darker. The blue wizards were sent to deal with Morgoth's remnants, to prevent his evil from spreading further. But it seems they did not succeed. The evil that was sealed here, it has not been vanquished. A strange sound interrupted their thoughts, a low, guttural growl that reverberated through the chamber. Shadows flickered across the walls, moving unnaturally, as if alive. The air thickened, and the stone beneath their feet seemed to tremble. A feeling of dread settled over them like a suffocating blanket. "Get ready," Gandalf said, his voice now commanding. "We are not alone." From the depths of the chamber emerged twisted, corrupted creatures, remnants of Morgoth's empire. They were not mere beasts, but guardians, brought to life by the dark magic that still lingered in the mountain. Their forms were distorted, a grotesque mockery of life, their eyes burning with a malevolent glow. The group fell into a defensive formation, weapons drawn. But it was clear that these creatures were not just mindless beasts. They were the embodiment of Morgoth's lingering influence, twisted and corrupted by his ancient power. The air was thick with their presence, their power seeming to radiate from the very walls. "They were meant to guard something," Gandalf said, his voice grim. Smaug was not merely hoarding gold, he was guarding something far worse. The historian's heart raced as they took in the full scope of what they were facing. "Smaug," they murmured. He was protecting a relic, a key to Morgoth's power. Gandalf nodded. Yes, Smaug's hoard was never just a collection of wealth. It was a distraction, a way to keep the true source of evil hidden away. The relic, tied to Morgoth's dark influence, was sealed here by the dwarves. But now it has been uncovered. The ground beneath their feet trembled again, the chamber shaking violently. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing heavier with each passing moment. The relic, whatever it was awakening. The creatures that had once served Morgoth's will began to move, their twisted forms slithering and crawling toward the group. The historian's breath caught in their throat as the realization hit them this was the true purpose of the Blue Wizards. They had fought to keep this very power sealed away, but it had been unleashed. The decision before them was clear. Confront the ancient evil that had been hidden for so long or retreat, and risk leaving it to spread once more. But the weight of that choice pressed down on them like an unshakable burden. This was no longer about treasure or glory. It was about preventing the return of something far more dangerous than any dragon. "We must face it," Gandalf said, his voice unwavering despite the looming terror. "We have no choice now. The evil that was sealed here will rise again if we do not act. The historian nodded, their heart heavy with the knowledge of what they had uncovered. This was the legacy of a rebel, a legacy tied to a past that had been buried for good reason. And now they were standing at the edge of a new war, one that would determine the fate of Middle-earth. As the creatures drew closer, the tension in the air reached its peak. The shadows danced around them, and the very mountains seemed to come alive, reacting to their presence. The historian's grip tightened on their weapon, and they knew deep down that the moment of reckoning had arrived. This was no longer a story of riches or kingship. It was a battle against the dark forces that had never truly been defeated. The true evil of a rebel had been awakened, and the group was about to face the legacy of the Blue Wizard's fight against Morgoth's lingering power. The question now was, would they survive it? The group ventured deeper into the heart of a rebel, the weight of their discovery heavy on their minds. The air felt thick, as if the mountain itself was aware of their presence, holding its breath as they uncovered long-buried secrets. The torches flickered as they moved, casting shadows that seemed to twist and shift unnaturally in the dark, as if the very stone was alive. Gandalf led the way, his brow furrowed with the knowledge that they had uncovered something far more dangerous than they had expected. This is no ordinary treasure, he murmured, his voice grave. What we have found here is a legacy, one that was meant to remain buried. The historian, standing behind him, felt the tension of his words settle in their bones. They had come here seeking answers, eager to unravel the mystery of the Blue Wizards and their campaign in the East. But what they had uncovered was far darker. The very foundation of a rebel seemed to pulse with a hidden power, one that had been locked away for centuries. As they descended deeper into the mountain, the ground beneath them grew colder, the walls pressing in closer. The distant echoes of their footsteps seemed to fade, swallowed by the oppressive silence that surrounded them. It was as if Erebor itself was trying to keep them from the truth. Gandalf stopped before a massive door, its surface covered in intricate runes and symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. The historian approached, their hand trembling as they reached out to touch the cold stone. These are the markings of the dwarves, they said softly. But these symbols, they are not of this world. This is something older, something darker. The air grew heavier as Gandalf stepped forward, his eyes scanning the door. The Blue Wizards came here, seeking to contain what was buried beneath. They fought an ancient evil that was tied to Morgoth's power, something that should never have been disturbed. The historian's heart raced as they realized the weight of Gandalf's words. Smaug, he wasn't just guarding treasure. He was guarding something far more dangerous, something that was never meant to be found. Gandalf nodded grimly, his expression darkening. Yes, Smaug's hoard was a distraction, a way to keep the true power hidden. What the dwarves The door slowly creaked open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The air inside was thick with the scent of ancient decay, and the flickering torchlight revealed the remnants of Twisted. Inside, the air was thick with dust and shadow. The walls were adorned with strange symbols and markings, their meanings lost to time. Yet, as the group entered the chamber, the symbols seemed to shift, their shapes twisting and contorting as if they were alive. The air crackled with an unsettling energy, and a low, almost imperceptible whisper seemed to emanate from the very stone beneath their feet. The room was vast, stretching farther than the eye could see. At its center was a pedestal, upon which lay an object shrouded in darkness, its shape hidden by the thick veil of shadow that hung around it. As they approached, the temperature in the room dropped, and the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They could hear fragmented words, ancient voices, echoing through time. "Guardians," Gandalf said quietly, his voice filled with both wonder and fear. "These are the guardians of Morgoth's power, remnants of the First Age." The group moved cautiously, but even as they stepped forward, a sense of dread filled the air. Shadows in the corners of the room seemed to writhe, coiling in upon themselves. And then, with a sharp, sudden motion, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, humanoid, but its features were distorted, grotesque, its face twisted with a malevolent grin that seemed to stretch too wide. Its eyes burned with a dark fire, and its body shimmered as if composed of shadow itself. "By the valor," Thorin whispered, stepping back. "What is that?" "It is one of the ancient guardians," Gandalf replied, his hand instinctively moving toward his staff. "Creatures once bound by Morgoth's will, corrupted by his evil. They were made to serve him, but their purpose has long been forgotten." As they looked around, more of these creatures began to materialize from the darkness, each one more twisted than the last. They were no longer dwarves, no longer men, but aberrations, corruptions of life itself, kept hidden away in a reber for centuries. "These are the true horrors that the dwarves awoke," Gandalf continued, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "This place is not just a tomb of treasure. It is a tomb of ancient evil. The relic they uncovered, the one Smaug was guarding, was far more than just gold. It was a key to Morgoth's power, locked away to keep it from corrupting the world once more." As the creatures began to move toward them, the group drew their weapons, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. But even as they did, they realized that this was not just a fight for survival. It was a battle to prevent the ancient evil from escaping, from spreading once more across Middle-earth. Gandalf's face hardened, his staff crackling with energy. "We must destroy the relic," he said. "Only then can we prevent this power from unleashing once again." Smaug's hoard was never just wealth, it was a prison, and now the key has been turned. As they engaged the Guardians, the battle was fierce. The creatures, once bound to Morgoth's will, no mere beasts. They were powerful, relentless, and filled with a deep, primordial hunger. Their movements were swift, and their blows struck with the force of stone, sending tremors through the ground. The group fought back with all their might, but it was clear that they were outmatched. These creatures were more than mere shadows. They were remnants of Morgoth's ancient empire, and they were bound to Erebor by an ancient and terrible power. As the group pressed forward, the whispers grew louder, and the shadows began to close in. The mountain itself seemed to shift around them, pulling them deeper into the heart of the darkness. Each strike of their weapons against the guardians seemed to make the air grow colder, more oppressive. They had to move fast. There was no time to waste. The relic was their only hope. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the pedestal where the relic lay. It was a black stone, smooth and gleaming with an unnatural light. Gandalf's hand trembled as he reached out to touch it, the power radiating from it like a force of nature. He could feel the weight of Morgoth's influence, the centuries of corruption and evil that had been sealed away within this artifact. The moment Gandalf's fingers brushed against the stone, the chamber seemed to shake. The guardians screamed in fury, their forms writhing in agony as the relic's power surged through them. The very air around them began to warp, twisting with dark energy. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as if they were trying to warn them, or perhaps urging them to release the power. "We have to destroy it," Gandalf shouted, his voice strained against the rising chaos. "Quickly, before it's too late." But as the group prepared to act, the very walls of Erebor seemed to shift. The stone groaned under the weight of centuries, and the shadows tightened around them, trapping them in a web of ancient power. The guardians surged forward, their forms now more monstrous, more violent, as if they had been unleashed. The tension in the air was palpable, the sense of dread overwhelming. Gandalf turned toward his companions, eyes filled with urgency. "We cannot retreat," he said. "This evil must be sealed away once again, or it will consume Middle-earth. Fight. We must destroy the relic." The guardians charged. The group braced themselves, and for the first time, they truly realized that the darkness beneath Erebor was no mere legend. It was alive,